It really looked very much like a mouse. Its round ears, its beady black eyes, its whiskers, its long, thin tail, and especially its coat of greyish-brown hair were all so lifelike. You would have thought it was a real live mouse until you saw the round hole in its left side. That was the keyhole, and when you wound the mouse up with a little brass key, it scuttled across the room. Jimmy had been given it for his 7th birthday, and at first he'd had a lot of fun with his Clockwork mouse. He'd frightened the life out of his big sister without even winding it up. He'd just put it quietly on her pillow so that when she woke, she was staring straight at it. He'd let it run across the carpet just as his mother came into the sitting room, and she'd taken a huge jump right into an armchair. And as for a bossy lady who came to tea and wouldn't stop talking, when the mouse ran straight at her feet, she stopped quick enough and started screaming instead, besides spilling hot tea in her lap, which made her hop about like a jumping jack. Even the cat was fooled at first, and was about to pounce upon the Clockwork mouse, so lifelike was it. But as time passed, everyone became used to Jimmy's toy, and he became bored with it, and, anyway, he lost the key. So for many years now, the Clockwork mouse had lain at the bottom of the toy cupboard, gathering dust, until one day Jimmy's mother decided to have a clear-out and get rid of all the children's old toys. She was packing them into a big cardboard box to take to Oxfam, dolls and model cars and jigsaws and board games and bits of Lego, when she came across the Clockwork mouse. For a split second she thought it was a real one as it stared at her with its beady black eyes, and she went cold with sudden fright. But then she recognized it and picked it up by its tail, holding it rather gingerly between her finger and thumb, for the tail felt horribly real. No key, she thought. Jimmy must have lost it, so the thing's no use to anyone, and she dropped it into the waste paper basket. In due course the basket was emptied into the dustbin, and later the binman came and tipped the contents of the dustbin into the refuse lorry. Possibly because it was small, the Clockwork mouse escaped being squashed by the crusher inside the lorry, and so ended up all in one piece on the rubbish dump. It rained that afternoon and washed all the dust and dirt off the toy, so that by nightfall it looked as good as new. Once again it looked lifelike. So much so that later that night a scavenging fox, searching the dump for food scraps, picked it up in its jaws and carried it off. At the edge of the field in which the rubbish was being dumped was a wood. In amongst the trees went the fox, mouse in mouth, and then dropped it on the ground. It was a young fox, not much more than a cub, but old enough to realize that this thing that looked like a mouse did not smell or feel like one, so it played with it for a while, tossing it up in the air, and then left it and padded off. Hours later, a little wood mouse scuttling along through the leaf litter came suddenly face to face with the toy. Coyly she touched noses with this handsome stranger, but then her mate appeared and rushed angrily at the Clockwork mouse, bowling it over and biting furiously at it. At that moment the quavering, eerie call of a tawny owl rang out, and the wood mice vanished. Seconds later the owl came swooping low on silent wings, and seeing a motionless mouse, snatched it up and flew off with it. The 3 hungry owlets waiting in their nest in a hollow tree opened their beaks wide as they saw their mother approach, carrying food. But then they hissed angrily when they found they could not eat the strange, hard object she had brought, so she tossed it out of the nest hole and flew off again. The Clockwork mouse lay at the foot of the hollow tree for months, until autumn came and the leaves fell and hid it from sight, forgotten by all the world. Only once was it remembered, and that was because Jimmy's mother decided to have the old carpet in his bedroom replaced, and the carpet fitter found something wedged in a crack in the floorboards. "Do you know what this fits, Jimmy?" his mother said to him later, handing him a little brass key. Jimmy looked at it and shook his head. But then he said, "Wait a minute, though. I remember now. It's the key to my Clockwork mouse. Where is it, Mum? I chucked it away years and years ago." "Mum, it was my mouse." "Honestly, Jimmy," his mother said, "anyone would think you were still 7 instead of twice that age." "I liked that mouse," Jimmy said. "I shall keep the key anyway, in memory of the poor old chap." In fact, the poor old chap was on the move again. A grey squirrel, searching through the bed of leaves on the floor of the wood, trying to remember where it had buried an acorn, had come upon the Clockwork mouse and scratched at it angrily, kicking it out into the open.